Welcome to Tech Talk Tuesday, brought to you by Idaho Public Television and Montana PBS.
Hey there, welcome back to Tech Talk Tuesday this week. I'm Nikki from Montana PBS, and here with me is my co-conspirator, Carrie from Idaho Public Television. And we've got Michelle Blanchette with us again this week, talking more about the book that she and Darcy created together, The Startup Teacher. You can see mine is well loved and marked and sticky noted. We are talking about one of the final chapters of the book, which is teacher leadership today, and teacher leadership and how it leads to change in classroom and educational settings. And so Michelle is going to share some thoughts about this idea. You can pick up the book to read a little bit more, but the focus of this series is that you could innovate some change in your space with or without the book. So Michelle, there's a whole chapter in this book about teacher leadership and devoted to cultivating those skills in teachers. Why was that a choice that you made when you were writing this book?
Sure. So first, thanks for having us back or me back. And leadership is a really key component of innovating and making change possible. Why? Because it is that intangible part of making projects happen. I say it's intangible because for me and in the startup world, leadership is really about how you work with people. Education is a whole industry based on people, and how do you help people meet their potential. So oftentimes when we're planning projects in the education space, it involves others. It involves working with our students, colleagues, parents, others in the community. And so it's really critical that we have that sort of emotional intelligence that we need to make sure that we can be successful. I like to think of this. I just started watching Ted Lasso. We were just talking about this before we chatted. If you haven't seen it, you should. It's a great, great show about a guy who is a football coach and goes to coach a soccer team. He knows nothing about soccer, but he just likes to coach. And what makes the show so great is this man is just a master with emotional intelligence. He has so much emotional intelligence. And he says, his job as a coach is just to help people meet their potential on and off the field, he says. And I feel like in the education space, I don't care if you're a teacher or administrator, our job is to help others meet their potential because we're developing people. Education isn't just about academics. We wanted to devote a whole section to help people develop their leadership potential, meaning how they, nurture and build relationships with others. Because as much as we, talk about this stuff in the education space, I'm not really sure how many opportunities we give for teachers to learn about how they can become a better leader, or how they can build better relationships, or how they can enhance their emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So one of the topics that comes up a lot is the words transformational leadership. And I think for me, that was one of the first times I'd seen that used in an educational text. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and why is that such an important part of the Startup Teacher Toolkit?
Sure. So I actually went and did a certificate program on innovative leadership, and I learned about transformational leadership in this course. And of course, it's just me with all these CEOs. And it was really amazing because I had never heard of transformational leadership before, but yet it's one of the most researched forms of leadership and proven to be the most effective form of leadership to engage employees, increase productivity, etc. And so as I was learning about this and what you can do to be a more transformational leader, um, it, it's kind of when the dots connected for me on, hey, we're missing this whole intangible piece. Like this is a strategic way that we as educators could build our emotional intelligence, because okay, maybe we're not trying to get more higher productivity for profits, but we are trying to get our students to be engaged. So how do we do that? Like, how do we get kids to buy into learning, to to be those engaged productive kids that we want them to be, who want to be in the classroom and who are reaching their potential. And so this just kind of provided a new lens to think about, okay, how might an educator employ some of these strategies to get that motivation that they seek in their students? And how could they also employ some of these strategies to do a better job of working with others? Because as we know, as much sometimes as we want to be that island, we have to work with others. We have our colleagues, we need to work with admin, with parents, etc. And it can be hard to navigate. And so learning about transformational leaderships and the components that make it up was a great way to kind of uncover um, how to first of all, how to identify maybe how different strategies that you need, and then, well, if I don't think I said that well, but it was it just gave a different lens to identify maybe other people's needs, and then how you can best contribute to meeting those needs and meeting people where they're at.
Yeah, I agree. I think leadership is something in education that often when we think of leadership, we think of the principal's office. And I've always had a hard time with that, because there are so many other ways to lead in a school setting and in a district setting. We've got curriculum designers, we've got instructional coaches, we've got department level leaders, we've got mentors. I think a teacher can lead and not leave the classroom. There's, I hate that the only road in leadership leads right to the principal's office, and that we don't have more training and formal professional learning for teachers who want to build their leadership skills. And I think that's what I loved about this book, was you really outlined some specific skills that teachers could work on cultivating in themselves as they're bringing about changes in their classrooms or in their skills or in their schools. Can you talk a little bit about those specific skills?
Sure. So I'll just go through the four kind of components. And I just want to add too, we noticed when we were doing, an innovation workshop, or someone had used the Canvas. Oftentimes what would stop them is thinking about a person, like, oof, I don't know if I want to ask, my principal. They're going to say no. Well, that shouldn't stop a bad idea. So how do you overcome that roadblock? And this is where leadership skills come into place. Another, taking on like the same project, they also need to work with their students. Well, how are they going to get buy-in from their students to do this project? Maybe they need to work with some of their colleagues, and that's a different group that they also need to work with to make their project successful. So what we really try to do with these four is kind of translate what they might look like in the education space. So just to go over them, one main category is individualized consideration. And that's really about, how are we meeting people where they're at? So if you can identify that somebody's resistant to change, maybe if we take a step back and notice this person's situation and say, you know what, this is a first year teacher I'm asking, they're already overwhelmed. I know they just came back from maternity leave. Just noticing and taking into account that other person's needs and seeing where they're at is huge. And this happens all the time by just having that, by just realizing, like, individualized consideration is a category of leadership. And what am I doing to meet the needs of others, or to be aware of the needs of others? And by doing that, you're more likely to be successful, because you're noticing others and you're able to address whatever those needs are. Another category is intellectual stimulation. How are we challenging other people, and how are we tapping into their interests? And this could be admin thinking about staff. How often do we tap in to the interests of our teachers? We have teachers that love writing, that want to start a special club. You have one that really wants to do this thing for the kids. Another wants to create a local partnership because they know somebody. How are we tapping into and nurturing that? And that same thing goes into the classroom. We talk about Genius Hour and passion projects and making learning relevant for students. So what are the strategies you can employ to help others have that intellectual stimulation that they need to be engaged in your work or in your project? Another thing to think about is there's a category called idealized influence. And this one is really about, I think, walking the talk and being mindful. Are we doing what we say? And I think this as well is another chance for us to kind of take a step back and notice what we're doing. So, we were just talking about trust before this chat. And, sometimes I don't feel like teachers feel trusted to do their work. So if you're an administrator and you say you trust your teachers, well, are you then micromanaging them, or are you taking that step back, giving them support, but getting out of the way? And I think modeling the behavior that we want to see is one of the best ways to ensure, because everyone else is watching. But so it's one of the best ways to ensure that we're getting the results we want to see in others. So this one is just really about thinking, are we modeling what we say we want others to do, and the kind of um, maybe values, skills, whatever that we say we want in others. The final one is really about inspirational motivation, and this is kind of covers. I think more, this one's more just about creating that clear vision, being and communicating well with others. Um, Sometimes in the leadership, like if you were to actually study transformational leadership, I feel like in this one they get a little bit into charisma. And I don't think you actually need charisma to motivate others. I think when you are able to give people a clear why behind what we're doing, and help them to understand how it benefits them, how it adds value maybe to the life or what they're doing, you're more likely to get buy-in to your for a project or for an idea. Now, this one is actually huge, I would say, both for administrators and for teachers, because how often do we need to engage and get buy-in from our users? So if it's an administrator who has to do a new initiative with staff, how are you motivating them to engage in this work? Everyone's busy, everyone's constantly bombarded with stuff, and this is where you can get strategies to think about how you motivate and engage others in an idea. And then as teachers, we do that probably every day. You have a new set of you have a new piece of content. How do you get the kids to care, and why should they? So I think sometimes we can be curious. I know I would have this as a teacher where it's like, "Ugh, how do I get them how do I get them to care about this? It's so important." But it was my job, right, to translate that for them, because why would a 13-year-old who just wants to hang out with his or her friends want to know about patterns, I don't know, in democracy? Like, why do they need to know? They don't get that. That was my job. And so anyways, that's kind of where inspirational motivation comes into play. But regardless, these four areas, if I obviously we did a better job in the book than me speaking right now. If you kind of look in this, we help you to ask questions about what your needs are as you're working with others, where you notice there's hiccups or there's kind of a clash when you're working with people. And it could be like, I feel like people don't care about what I'm doing, or no one's listening to me. And with these questions, you kind of identify maybe which one of these areas you should go into, and then we give activities to kind of help you develop these different areas of leadership.
Yeah, that's great. And I think I like that you added this chapter, because I think what you said in the beginning is all too true. A lot of teachers will fear trying something new or making a change, even a small one, if they're worried they're going to get any kind of a pushback, whether it's from the teacher across the hall or the administration. And I always encourage teachers to let admin and grade level team members know that they're doing this, and invite them to add feedback to the process, and to kind of loud and proud own what you're doing. And I think the vision part is really important. Communicating what you're doing is really, really important. I've learned that a lot just in my job here, is making sure people understand what it is that I do, and why it's important. And when I work with teachers, they want to write grants and get money into their school and to fund new projects or new technology. And I always say, you got to think of this as a project. Like, what is it that you're going to do, and how are the kids going to directly benefit from what you're doing? You can't just say, I want some money.
Yes.
So I think it's the same kind of process. So Michelle, I really appreciated your comments about leadership today. Carrie, did you have any questions you wanted to throw out there?
I just really, I don't know if this is so much of a question, but I was thinking of it. And as I read that chapter, I was thinking of it from the perspective of just that teacher who doesn't have a desire to be in a leadership position, who doesn't have a desire necessarily. I mean, there are teachers who are like that, and that's perfectly fine. But what I love about this chapter is, and Nikki, you kind of mentioned this. We so often think of leadership as, admin, or those teachers who are on our leadership committee, right? We had that at the school where I taught. But what I love about this is that all of the things can be applied to just in your classroom with your students. How do you get buy-in from your students? How do you, motivate them? Because gosh, I taught fifth grade, and motivating those fifth graders to care about, 2-digit multiplication and 3-digit division was not always easy, or, to care about, like Michelle said, the Bill of Rights or whatever it was that I was working on. And so that's what I loved about this chapter, is that it isn't just for teachers who might be interested in becoming leaders in their school. And I don't think that teachers think of themselves as like, you're leading in the classroom, whether you are on a committee or a principal or a mentor. If you're just going in and you're teaching every day, that's a huge leadership position that you're in. And so all of the questions, all of the activities that were included, I noticed as I was reading, were really fitting as well for teachers who just want to increase the leadership in their classroom. It doesn't have to be on a school level.
Mm-hmm.
I think I love that you added that, because I think learning about leadership is just about helping yourself to become more vulnerable and understand that whether you're planning a project or you're teaching, it's not personal. It kind of helps you give that different lens of like, okay, how can I reach people better? How can I help them reach their potential? Because a lot of times people come to you and it has nothing to do with you if they're resistant or they don't care. And I think having more of a strategic approach to how can I reach these kids, my colleagues, etc. How do I engage them? What are their needs? How do I support them? I think that's what learning about leadership is really about. And I hope we can kind of change that dialogue so that teachers are more happy to explore these topics, because it just adds so much value. And I think it makes it easier to teach, because you just have a new way of approaching how you work with your students and with your colleagues. So.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for joining us. And I think we've learned a ton, and hopefully teachers watch this and feel inspired to keep moving along and making those changes in their classrooms and getting to the bottom of those frustrating problems. So thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for joining us for Tech Talk Tuesday, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.